Well, I'm back again with another video, and it did in fact rapidly intensify. It is now Tropical Storm Francine, and it is sitting just off the coast of the Mexican coastline here. It's expected to take more of a righter hand turn than what the initial models had said. However, I did say that if it were to take this turn, it would be a lot stronger than what a lot of the models were saying. And unfortunately, that seems to be true based off some of the intensity guides we're going to look at here later in the video. However, I just wanted to get kind of this central plot open to show everything. So besides the obviously we have the main threat here in the Gulf, we have two other areas to watch. One that has a 40 to 60% chance of forming within the next 2 days, and then another one with a greater than 40% chance of forming in the next 2 days. Both of these do not seem to be a current threat to the mainland United States. However, that could change if they were to develop. But obviously, all eyes are going to be on Francine as it moves closer towards Gulf of Mexico within the next couple of days. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the track here. So this is the official track from the National Hurricane Center. This is what they've came out with today, or the newest one that they've came out with today. And the most concerning thing is we can, if we look through this yellow cone that shows the tropical storm force winds, that it's already showing off the coast, just off the coast of Mexico. It takes a very sharp right turn. It's hard to see, but it's in there. It's right around here. I kind of showed that black outline right there. It takes that turn and it beelines it straight towards Louisiana. Should it hit west of New Orleans, however, it's supposed to hit somewhere in between um western Louisiana and heading in towards central Louisiana. Greatest chance for direct hit will be right, obviously, right where that red outline is for those hurricane warnings. But a more of a smackdown hit, obviously, would be right here. Now, however, it's still many days out from this. It could drift. It could drift a little bit further off, and obviously not that much. It could drift a little bit further off and hit more closer to New Orleans, or it could hit more closer towards in Texas. Or it's gonna be somewhere in between the white outline. Now the dotted outline is for once it's very far on land. Once it's all the way up there, which does pose a severe weather threat. Once it's up here in the Ohio Valley, and even really when it gets on land from about Louisiana upwards into Arkansas, that really starts to pose a severe weather threat for any severe bands that get pulled up through it, and those bands would cause it primarily severe weather threat right on Alabama and Mississippi, maybe even a little bit, perhaps a little bit of Georgia, and obviously Tennessee as it would track up north, getting on to a low pressure system that will come across the United States, bringing much hotter temperatures to the eastern coast, which I will get into soon. It won't be in my next couple of videos. And then I did want to take a look at the storm surge forecast because obviously storm surge is something very significant, and it can be deadly. So it's good to talk about. It's good to know. So a general risk from anywhere from Galveston Bay in Texas all the way down towards the borderline. You can see 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. Yes, it will expand out, and it will kind of spread out as it's centered over the Gulf. It will kind of spread the waves out. So areas that aren't in that direct path still will see some storm surge. It just won't be anything as significant as where it's projected to hit. Obviously, the main concern is right in here on Vermilion Bay, 5 to 10 feet of storm surge. Obviously, this is right off the coastline here. It's but this is still very extremely key to discuss because some areas that are very low lying, especially further into that bay, a lot of boats there, you know, with 5 to 10 feet of storm surge smashing boats on land, that can cause a lot of damage. And if one of those boats hits a weak foundation of a house could collapse. And that brings problems for a lot of Louisiana, not just the coastline. And this storm will bring a lot of problems, not just for primarily the coastline. it's important to talk about because a lot of people like to live on beach lines and coastlines. And that's unfortunately where, a lot of the injuries and like damage occurs in hurricanes. But besides the 5 to 10 feet, we can see 3 to 5 feet in between the Texas and Louisiana borderline. I think this will eventually get upgraded to maybe 9 feet if it stays on its track, which I'll get into here in just a sec, and I'll also get into the wind speeds in just a sec. 4 to 7 feet, a little bit further to the east than I. Well, 4 to 7 feet, a little way off to the east. Again, that's for when it's here. It will shoot out. It's going to shoot out waves both ways, and then a general 2 to 4 feet, way over by the Mississippi air, small area of Mississippi. So let's get into the winds here. So if we go ahead and run this ahead here, this is about what it is right now. It's almost a hurricane. It's projected to become a hurricane tonight into tomorrow morning. And that's when, if it really rapidly keeps this rapid intensification all the way up through, not like all the way, it keeps intensifying as it makes its way towards Louisiana. It's gonna, it, we could start talking about a potential major hurricane. And I mean, by this point, you can see well defined walls here. Got an eye wall that's formed, and potentially even a little bit of an eye right in the middle as it moves up. However, it's going to unfortunately. Last video I said, we didn't really know what was going to happen here. What right in between Texas and the Mexico borderline? Is it going to go straight up and cause less of a problem, or more and cause more of a problem for the coastline here, or is it going to, stay, or is it going to turn? It's going to turn, and I'll show you that here in a second. And I showed you at the beginning. You can see it actually turns way earlier than just here. Initially, the one model yesterday said it would start to turn right about here. It had it tracking closer to the coastline and then turning. This has it turning at a much earlier rate. This has it turning at around Tuesday, September 10th. It already starts its turn up, which is a good timing for that turn. That's also when some of the more rapid intensification happens. You can see it's relatively formed here, but it's we still have these pockets of dry air that get in. Watch what happens after it makes that kind of more of a turn here. You can see it really gets wrapped up tight, and that's where we have that chance of it continuing to intensify as it moves into the much still warmed primed waters. And that will continue to happen. It'll likely intensify all the way up to about landfall right here. And this is pretty concerning. This big eye with a very predominant um wall surrounding the eye, especially with this back of the eye wall right there. That's very concerning to say how strong this shows. And I'll show the proper intensity guide here in a sec, but this could very well be a major hurricane right here, as it moves pretty close, if not into the New Orleans suburbs. And once that moves in, it'll obviously weaken out. But that's going to cause a lot of problems right in this region right here, which is why there's that 5 to 10 storm surge uh feet outlined, right? And also you can see we have those winds. We will see areas of 40 to 50 over here, which is why there is that 2 to 4 foot storm surge warning. Because when this gets on land, it's going to keep pulling. When it initially gets on land, it's going to keep pulling up winds from the coastline here, and it kind of wobbles almost a little bit more over to the east towards, unfortunately, that 2 to 4 foot storm bay region. Which is why it's going to cause a little bit of a potential threat for storm surge, but not as much as the initial impact right through these, predominantly right through these areas. Once it does that, it's going to rapidly weaken and move up through Mississippi, Alabama, cause some storms there, and then Ohio Valley, and eventually will get caught on a low pressure system and quickly fade off. And then let's show the radar now. So this is actually a really good representation of what I've been talking about. We do have some storms on the backside developing here, but it's not a hurricane yet. But you can see just by this and this time, it's much more organized, and it gets much more organized right around Wednesday, September 11th. You can see we could have a predominant eye here. However, this model has that eye being much weaker, especially on this kind of backside right here, much weaker, not as strong as what those wind forecasts were saying. That was showing a very predominant eye all the way around as it moves closer to New Orleans or Louisiana. I'm sorry, not New Orleans. But you can see it's already a ton of rainfall is going to be falling over the area as these bands hit, even before the worst of that eye kind of wall right through this region even hits. And that's going to cause that kind of preliminary flooding. But as it gets closer, you can see that backside does strengthen up here. And you can see these feeder bands begin to develop. That's what's going to ultimately bring a severe weather threat. And not just for, later down the road. That's also going to cause that severe weather threat in the short term. Unfortunately, in areas of like possibly New Orleans and further up, as the hurricane or what as a hurricane moves up, at this point it's going to become a hurricane. But it'll become pretty cemented. Still seems to be pretty lopsided. There's a lot more precipitation on the head rather than the backside, but nonetheless, it will become a hurricane and it will rapidly move on land. But you see these right here on this backside here? That's why there's that severe weather threat. If it pulls up a lot of moisture and there's a lot of moisture already there and it's pulling it up and there's enough storm and wind shear, there we could see a couple isolated tornadoes and maybe even a small scale tornado outbreak right on in Alabama, maybe even extending in towards Mississippi. But so yeah, now let's look at the precipitable rainfall amounts because this is, that flooding potential. And you can see, so this is Wednesday 11th. This is few moment. This is just off the coast of Louisiana. And we're already seeing some of those outer bands could easily put down 2-3 inches ahead of this, just clump here, easily 5 to 10 inches of rain, if not more. And you see when that gets closer, that's really emphasized right through this region. So not only going to be talking about coastal flooding and storm surge, we're also going to be talking possibly about inland flooding. A lot of areas, especially in this region, are going to see a lot of rain, and it's on top of this damage, power outages. It's going to make recovery efforts and other not just recovery efforts, other recovery efforts. Just it's going to make everything really difficult with that just heavy amounts of rain just being there, just overall being there. And then obviously the intensity. This is the all of the models again showing the latest intensity guide right here. You can see they ultimately say it's going to become a category 1. Now, will it become a a category 1, like a very strong category 1, possibly category 2, or even mid-range category 2 as some are beginning to project? Or will it stay, right in the ballpark of just a normal category 1 and quickly die off? The best case scenario would be just staying in this mid range right here. Worst case scenario would be the worst hypothetical worst case scenario would be somehow it it would just suddenly rapidly strengthen to category 3 upon landfall, which is major hurricane. Which it's still not out of the question, but it's safe to say it's going to be in between Cat 1 or Cat 2 upon landfall, which is good. So yeah, that's a little update. I just wanted to kind of spread out here. And so yeah, I may have another video again tomorrow explaining and see what may have another video again tomorrow explaining more about what's gonna happen, stuff like that. But if I don't, then I will definitely have one not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow. I will definitely have one then about the hurricane if it's not already close to impact. But yeah, so if I see you guys tomorrow or the day after, I will see you guys again. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see everybody in the next forecast.